what should we do? Let's do top 5 quarterbacks for week 5. So I'll start us off. I'm going to start from number 1 because I think it's more obvious. 1 and 2 are at least pretty clear, and it gets a bit more questionable or iffy when you get to 4 and 5. So I'm sticking with Mahomes as my number 1 quarterback. Reason being is, again, he got the win. So 4 wins in a row now, having started 0-1, they're now 4-1. He had to do it without Kelsey for parts of the game. Hopefully he'll be okay going forward, Mr. Pfizer. But who knows? When Kelsey was out, made some good throws. Apart from one drop, I can't remember who it was, the rookie, but Rice stepped up with some good catches. And again, he did what was needed, got them over the line. Vikings is always a banana skin match. Like, they can turn up and just outperform anyone on their day. I like the McDuffie-Jefferson matchup, which I was looking forward to before the game. Unfortunately, it didn't go on for as long as I'd hoped. But yeah, Mahomes number 1. Number 2, I'm sticking with Allen. He didn't do much wrong, really, in the game against the Jags. When you take everything into consideration with the travelling, what time it would have been that they started in terms of his body clock, still played pretty well, made some great throws, made some first downs with his legs when needed. Impressed with what I saw. He did make a pick, but again, it was basically a long punt. The pick, from what I remember, it was a 3rd down play, and the pick was inside their 5, I believe. So it was just a very good punt when you look at it that way. 3rd, I'm going with Jalen Hurts. Reason being is a quarterback's job is to get you wins. Jalen Hurts is doing that. You could argue that he should be my number 2. But not just that. I like that his leadership, and he can throw it on you again. There are questions about his arm, but he can. The runs that he made last week against the Rams, he's so hard to bring down. As a defense, he must be a nightmare to play against. He's a thicker Lamar Jackson, obviously not as fast, but he's a leader, man. Like that O-line, them wide receivers love playing with him, and that's exactly what you want from your quarterback. Number 4, I'm toing and swaying. I'm going with Purdy. It's the 2nd time he's been in my top 5 quarterbacks this year, and a lot of the same of what I said about Hurts. Judge a quarterback on, do they get you the wins? He has. That's why he's in my top 5. Again, similar to Hurts, the players love playing with him. When the pressure moment, so I'd say that was the biggest moment for them as a team against that Dallas Cowboys defense. They made them look quite pedestrian, but that is a good defense. I don't care what anyone says. The team might be overrated, but the defense isn't overrated. Not the same beast with Diggs out, admittedly, but he stepped up. I think he threw for 4 touchdowns. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Jay. But I think it was 4 touchdowns he threw for. Had 3 throwing and 1 rushing. I can't remember, but he definitely had part of 4 touchdowns. And yeah, he actually was let loose. He threw the ball, and he throws the ball on time. He's accurate. You've mentioned a few times already, Jay, he doesn't have the biggest arm. You don't need the biggest arm in that offense. We've got so many skilled players. Get them the ball in open space. What coach would you want to do that? Kyle Shanahan. Who's his coach? Kyle Shanahan. I think it's a perfect fit. A bit like Mahomes and Andy Reid, Purdy and Shanahan. I think in a few years' time, we could look at this in a similar way where this is a match made in heaven for both. And then my number 5 might be jumping the gun a bit here, but I was delighted to see a return of one Joe Burrows. Finally, Chase, I think, set a record for the amount of receptions in one game for the Bengals. I can't remember exactly how many it was. I think it was about 15 or 16 receptions. And he seems to be moving a bit better. He actually scrambled a few times, which I haven't seen at all this year. So with that health, I would be worried if I was the Ravens, if I was the Browns, if I was the Steelers, thinking, crap, we've had 5 games and they've been as bad as they probably can be, and they're only 1 game behind. The Bengals are going to get better. Burrows is going to continue getting better. I don't know if T. Higgins is out for the whole year. I don't know if you guys know that or not, if he will return or not. If he does return, this is going to get scary at the end of the year again. This team is stacked on offense. And yeah, I think Burrows very quickly is going to climb up this top 5 list and be up there with Mahomes. So that's my top 5 for week 5. Jay, do you want to give us your top 5?
Yep, sure. So what did we have last week? We had Mahomes number 1, Allen 2, Tua 3, Herbert 4, CJ Stroud 5. I agree. I think Burrow looked really good last week. He's not quite made my top 5 yet, but he is on his way for sure. I'm going to start with a trivia question for my number 5. There are 2 quarterbacks in the NFL who have thrown over 1,200 yards with no touchdowns.
Right.
I would like you guys to name them. I'll give you a few more clues. They are both top 5 in yards per attempt. So there's no we're throwing checkdowns to not throw interceptions here. They are both top 10 in passing touchdowns, and they are both top 10 in passer rating.
And so that first one you said they've thrown for over 1,200 yards.
1,200 yards this season with 0 touchdowns. 0 interceptions.
That's what I was going to say. Hold on a minute. Right, 0 interceptions. So
that's Purdy.
Yeah.
Purdy hasn't thrown a pick.
Correct.
And your friend, number 5 from last week, CJ Stroud.
Yeah, CJ.
CJ Stroud.
And he set a record, hasn't he? The most passing attempts without an interception for a starting quarterback, I think I read.
Yes, he has. And as I said, they're both top 5 in yards per attempt. So there's no sort of we're throwing check.
Yeah.
They are throwing down
put that way. They're not thrown behind the line.
So this was a difficult one for me because the degree of difficulty is obviously far greater for CJ Stroud. But I just think the emphaticness of Purdy's performance this week puts him at 5 for me in the top 5. So CJ Stroud does drop out. He did put together, in the end, what could have been a game-winning drive.
Yeah.
In the end, they lose it because of Ridder also putting together a similar drive. Wasn't his best week, granted. If you don't want it to come down to that, put the game away. So Purdy at 5 this week. Herbert stays at 4. He didn't play, so I can't really drop him or push him up. So he stays where he is for this week. At 3, Tua stays at 3. Beat the Giants, took care of business. Again, I can't really, jump you over Allen because of that. So Allen stays at 2. Bills, they all got off to a slow start, very sluggish, then exploded when it was a little bit too late in the end. So he stays at 2, and then Mahomes at 1. Mahomes, I just see so much completeness from his game, the finest details. I go back to that play that I talked about earlier. Just every inch of the play he's wired on. Like, what can happen? Am I going to get sacked? Do I run now? He's so much more than just the talent now. Like, he's becoming the complete quarterback. And he doesn't need to get to 7 Super Bowls for me to be the GOAT. Like, I can see this happening already, where I will say one day, this man is the greatest of all time. Obviously, he has to keep going. But I don't personally think it comes down to number 7. I just think he needs to keep doing what he's doing. And I'm sure those Super Bowls will come anyway. But yeah, Mahomes clearly at 1.
Perfect. Thank you, Jay. And Paul, what are your top 5 quarterbacks for week 5?
So last week we had Mahomes, Allen, Lamar Jackson, Tua, and then Herbert. The list is similar this week. The one I had problems with, that I had trouble with, was Lamar. How much do I put on him? How much do I put on his receivers, like we touched upon earlier? So I'll run through from 5 to 1 what I ended up with. Herbert stays at 5, didn't play, can't fault him. I think he's ridiculously talented. He needs to be in this top 5. New entrant at number 4, Brock Purdy. How scary is it that, by the way, now San Francisco can throw the ball as well at that level? Like, he had 17 completions for 4 touchdowns. He hasn't thrown a pick, as we said earlier on. Like, how scary is that? That now you've got to, if they do scheme to take away CMC, then they can devastate you that way with all the weapons that they've got on in the outside passing game, with probably, well, if not the best, in the top 2 play callers in the NFL. Like, ridiculous. Tua at number 3, he did remind us that he does throw some dumb picks from time to time against the Giants. It was against the Giants, so he got away with it. But they could come back to bite you later on in the year. He's super aggressive, and he maybe just needs to calm down a little bit. Did you see that? Do you remember that play where they motioned Tyreek Hill? The corner wasn't lined up. There was no one covering Tyreek Hill, so the corner ran over to Tyreek to cover Tyreek, and Hill just looked over at Tua like, "Okay, you see what I see? You see what I see?" Like, right, and he just set off. And it was just a bomb straight touchdown. Like, you can tell from the fact that the corner has to run to him, there's no help for the Giants in the Giants secondary. Just ridiculous. So he's aggressive, but he needs to calm down. He's going to throw some dumb picks. Josh Allen, like, he's so talented, but he needs some help from the rest of his team. He really does. They've got absolutely no running game. And how many years now have Buffalo not had a running game? They're just not helping him at all. Like we were talking about before, defensive coach not putting the ridiculously talented quarterback that they have in the best possible position to win games, because he's good enough to challenge Mahomes. He doesn't have Mahomes' situation with Andy Reid. And number 1, Patrick Mahomes, the best quarterback in the NFL. It's not even a conversation.